Hey everybody, Black Ninja 797 here, and welcome back to another episode of Myth Busting Mondays. And for the final myth of today's episode, guys, this one is really cool. This is going to end up being, can you save a teammate from a smoker's tongue by simply jumping in the way? This is going to be like those cheesy parts in movies where someone is getting shot at and somebody else randomly jumps into frame and takes the bullet for them to save their life. Except that we're just simply doing it with a smoker's tongue instead of a real-life gun. So that is going to be the myth for today's episode at the very end. I hope you guys end up looking forward to that. And if you guys have a myth of your own that you would like to have be featured in next week's episode of Myth Busting Mondays, just please put in the comment section down below. But yeah, guys, let's get on with this week's episode of Myth Busting Mondays. Myth: can you still fire the mountain minigun on the Dead Air finale when you have been charged by a charger? Okay guys, so myth number 1 is going to be submitted in by JJ Lipscomb. JJ says that he had an interesting experience when he tried this on the Xbox version of the game, so I'm going to be trying this on the PC version of the game to see if we perhaps get something similar, if not the exact same to what he was experiencing on the Xbox copy. Okay, so I'm in place, I'm about to spawn in a charger any second now, and I'm just going to be seeing if whether or not that we get any sort of weird result, because that's kind of what JJ implied, so here it goes. And, oh yeah, this is definitely screwy. My camera is completely messed up here. And this glitch not only affects the person that's shooting the minigun, but it also affects anybody that's watching them shoot the minigun, because anybody that's watching them shoot the minigun also experiences the player miles being funky as well, where you can end up doing these weird animations where you can spin around in circles and technically be away from the gun, but still manage to control it at the same time. But what about the main question of this myth is, can you actually shoot the gun? Are you able to still use the minigun and end up spraying bullets out of it rather than just spinning it around in circles if you get grabbed by the charger? And to answer that question, it's a technically yes. Because for this frame here from Glabersko's perspective, you can see for the briefest of moments that when Glabersko gets charged, you can still technically see the minigun firing. But this doesn't last long, it only lasts like 1 or 2 seconds, and so I would say that since the normal minigun can end up going forever pretty much until it overheats, but this is just like for a second or two, it's negligible and really doesn't count. Plus also, this is a glitch anyways, or an oversight in the game, so there's really no way to go about this other than just making an educational guess. Despite seeing a visual representation of the minigun firing, and I use that term loosely, this is going to end up being, in my opinion, a busted myth, because even though the minigun sort of fires, it really doesn't count, let's be honest. And so I would say that since you really can't do anything more than just like wind the minigun up for a frame or two, it's just going to end up being a busted myth in my opinion, because really this wasn't meant to end up amounting to anything anyways, it's just kind of a more funny comedic bug. Myth: will you die jumping off of No Mercy Hospital while you have God mode on? Okay guys, so myth number 2 is going to be submitted by Glabersko. Now this might sound kind of silly because it's just kind of like, how can you die if you have God mode enabled, but take a look at this. When you end up going on No Mercy's rooftops, you end up getting this cutscene right here. This is supposed to be the death cutscene because when you end up falling off of the map, you don't just fall straight to the ground. They have this fancy cutscene. But you can see that I don't exactly, like, air quote, die. I just kind of am soft locked into this cutscene permanently. Or at least that's what it looks like, because even though technically I am not exactly dead, I am not able to control my character. I'm just stuck looking at the screen. So you may think that by technicality that this myth is confirmed or busted depending on how you look at it. You can consider dead just being not being able to play the game, or dead being as in like my character is actually dead. But if you give this just only a few more seconds longer, you will find out that shortly here in a second that this cutscene is not permanent. It's just going to temporarily end up keeping you in a soft lock, because eventually when you end up going idle, you can end up possessing your character again and you will now be underneath the map. Which means that by sort of a definition, this is confirmed and busted depending on which way you look at it, like I said. But from the way I look at it is that since all you have to do is just wait and you'll still sort of be alive again and be able to retake control of your character, I'm going to say that the myth is busted because you don't really die, you just more rather get inconvenienced. Myth: can a witch stumble a survivor into water and kill them? Okay guys, so myth number 3 is going to be submitted in by Tyler. Now this myth was kind of hard to do because there's really not a spot for a witch to knock you into water deep enough to kill a survivor, at least in a way that would be easy. The only really parts of Left 4 Dead that have a deep enough source of water to drown or, like, air quote, fall off, the only sources of where you can end up falling off or drowning in water is going to end up being the second chapter of Coldstream, the finale of Death Toll, the spawn rooms of both the Sacrifice and also the Parish, and then lastly, the finale of the Parish. Now, out of all of these, the Parish finale is best because there's no spawn protection there, and there's also not a part of the map that's already trying to end up killing a player via this method. So instead, it's just going to be a normal map, so we have a good base to start off with, and that's why we're going to be trying this on the finale of the Parish. Okay, so here we are on the finale of the Parish. We're right at the helicopter, so there's nothing blocking us, whether it be spawn protection or a part of the map. We're going to be spawning in a witch with console commands because she does not spawn here naturally, and we're going to be seeing whether or not she will end up bonking us off, incapacitating us, or make us hang on the ledge. And when she ends up attacking all of us, we end up getting all three, where I fall off to my death, Dan's hanging on the ledge, and Glabursko is getting killed and being incapacitated. So yes, myth number 3 is confirmed because you can end up dying to a witch this way, although this wouldn't end up happening in a real game because a witch would never spawn in these areas, or at the very least, you would not be able to lure one to these areas before the time that she catches up to you. Myth. Is it possible to get 42 points in the Stash Whacker minigame on Dark Carnival with just 1 credit? Alrighty guys, so myth number 4 is going to be submitted in by Zaku. Now to give a little bit of context to this myth, the Stash Whacker minigame is basically the Whack-A-Mole ripoff that is going to end up being on the 4th chapter of Dark Carnival. Now, on this particular minigame, eventually after a certain score limit, which is usually around the early 40s, the machine will end up break and spewing out tickets, which means that you will no longer be able to use it in that game. Here's the thing though, is it possible to be able to do this in one single go? Because normally when you play on this machine, you typically get about, I would say, the early 20s before you have to hit the button again and end up continuing your score into another game. So it saves your progress, but you usually have to do multiple attempts to do this. So we are going to be having me, Dan, and Glabursko all taking the overpowered melee weapons that we can think of and constantly try to hit these Stash Whacker peanuts that are coming out of the machine. Now, the game only usually lasts about 30 seconds, so we're going to have to be very quick if we want to be able to get all of them within one single attempt. So here is all three of us trying to hit every single one of these things that pops up out of the machine. They usually end up starting off slow with one at a time, but then eventually they will multiply and end up being sometimes 2 or 3 at a time, so we really have to make sure that we are constantly hitting them all and not missing a single one. Very, very similarly to how you have to make sure you really end up managing your points well when you try to unlock Noam Chomsky on Chapter 2 of Dark Carnival. But here's the thing, is that if you take a look at the score and also take a look at the time and seeing how fast we're going, we're really not on track to getting anywhere close to 42 points. And this might be a little bit anticlimactic, but me and Glabursko ended up going up to the machine at one point and just hitting the button and not trying to score anything, but just count how many of these little peanut guys would pop up out of the machine, seeing if it was anywhere close to 42. And we actually counted them, every single one, and it wasn't even close. It was like in the early 20s at the most. It was somewhere between 20 and 24. It never really got past 24. That was like the maximum that it would put in that time frame. So because of that, I'm going to say that myth number 4 is busted, although this was a cool idea. So now everybody, we're moving on to the final myth, and once again is going to be, if a smoker's tongue shoots at your teammate, if you jump in front of the way, would you be able to stop them from getting grabbed, and basically defeat the auto-lock targeting that the smoker's tongue ends up using. So let's move on to the final myth now and see what happens. Myth. Can you save a survivor by walking into a smoker's tongue while they are being pulled? Okay guys, so the final myth is going to be submitted in by Lee Everett. Now I want you guys to take a look at the myth really carefully because this is something that kind of tripped us up. The way that the myth is going to end up being worded is as such. Can a survivor be saved by another survivor walks into the tongue while the other survivor is being pulled? This is the exact wording of the myth as it was written. Now this led to me and the crew being slightly confused on what the outcome was trying to be for the final myth. I'm not trying to be a grammar Nazi or anything, I'm just genuinely asking what was the intended idea behind this myth, because Glabursko, me, and Dan all had very different ideas of what the final result was supposed to be or lead to. So for example, Glabursko thought that Lee meant that if a survivor was already grabbed by the smoker's tongue, could you cut the tongue by somehow walking into it with your body? Whereas I thought that if you had a survivor that was ending up getting a tongue shot at them, if another survivor jumps in the way, like in the old movies where you would take a bullet for somebody, could you get the pathing to end up changing and redirecting to somebody else? And then Dan had something similar in the middle, although be a little bit closer to my side, but the point is we were just all confused. So what we decided to do was just test everything and just show you guys the results of everything. And then Lee, since you're the one that made up the myth in the first place, just tell us in the comment section down below what was the idea behind the myth so we can be able to give it a proper result after this video comes out. So here is going to be the first one. This is Globbersko's idea plus also his result. So as you guys can see, Dan gets grabbed and I shimmy in between the smoker's tongue, but it never amounts to anything, which means that Globbersko's version, at least of the myth, is going to be busted. You cannot cut it with your body. And this is going to be the way that I interpreted it. This is going to end up being an AI smoker where Dan jumps in the way and saves Globbersko's life. And so for this one, its myth result is going to end up being confirmed. So we have two different methods of doing things, and each one gives a different result, one being busted, the other one being confirmed. Now, this ended up making us confused for a while about how we want to word this, so we decided to refer back to the wording of the myth one more time, which once again is going to be this. Can a survivor be saved by another survivor walks into the tongue with the other survivor being pulled? Taking a look at the way that this is worded a second time, there's one word that stood out to me. And that's going to be the last one, pulled. You can't pull somebody if they're not already grabbed by something. So having a new perspective on things, I'm leaning towards Globbersko's idea more about how to interpret the myth, but at the end of the day, Lee, you can just clarify in the comment section down below. But as of right now, based off the way it's worded and all of the guys testing, I'm going to end up saying that this myth is busted. Based off the wording with the last word pulled, meaning that the survivor has already been grabbed at this point and you're just trying to cut them with your body. But yeah, guys, that is going to be it here for today's episode of Mythbusting Mondays, and I do truly hope you guys ended up enjoying. And if you did, please consider dropping a like, comment, subscribe, follow, and all that beautiful stuff. If you have a myth of your own that you would like to have be featured in next week's episode of Mythbusting Mondays, just please put it in the comment section down below. But yeah, guys, I hope you ended up enjoying seeing another YouTube video for the most unique YouTubers you're ever going to see. Thanks for watching, guys, all of you, and peace out.
Hey meme lords, Jesus here, and you better have enjoyed that video there by the eternal god Daddy Ninja. You should probably subscribe too, or the mighty Moab will come for your balls. If you enjoyed the video, you might like it too, and give me the memes. Flash, bang, boom!
Globbersko, it's such a shame that it's just me and you today only for filming.
Yeah, I thought Dan will come.
Yeah, I wish Dan was here. Jesus Christ, you laid it right in front of me! Hey, he made it! Welcome to Mythbusting.
I hope I didn't miss much. I had to travel about 2,000 miles.